joining us on the Boardwalk on the hotline. Jason Fitz, co-host of Spain and Fitz 7 to 9 right here on 97.3 ESPN. Also, one of the many co-hosts of the college football ranking show on the digital side on ESPN. And Jason was wearing, as you saw as well, Hunter, a Christmas suit. So if anybody is in the holiday spirit, it's got to be Jason Fitz, right?
Absolutely. It looked phenomenal, and I love the comparison between that and the tattoos.
Now, just to let you know, Jason, Hunter himself has a plethora of tattoos himself.
Look, if you got tattoos and you're not looking like a Christmas tree already, it's the perfect combination. You know, like it's bewildering to some people to see my level of Christmas spirit because everybody knows, like, I'm a big Halloween guy. So I think a lot of people think that means, like, with the tattoos and Halloween, I'm into all of this dark, like, scary stuff, which is true. But on November 1st, man, the Christmas music starts blaring at top level. I've got more trees. Like, anywhere that I can shove a Christmas tree in a house, I will shove a Christmas tree in a house. Like, I am as obnoxious as can be. And so it's my challenge to offend the sensibilities of Mike Golick Jr. every week with whatever I'm wearing that week on the show. You put us together at Christmas time, I'm going to be a beacon of light whether he likes it or not.
Well, I like that you brought that up because I had a huge debate with the fiance because she wanted to put up the Christmas tree, everything, November 1st. I had to fight back a little bit. That's a little too early for me, but of course she won. So you're telling me November 1st is definitely on the table for you.
Look, everybody knows I'm value-oriented, right? So I was out at, like, Spirit Halloween, like those stores that sell all the Halloween stuff. On November 1st, everything goes deep discount. And so, like, there was one of the Halloween stores that had this massive, like, 12-foot clown that's demented and everything. So on November 1st, I went and bought that clown from the store, the display one, and I'm disassembling it and throwing it in the car. And I'm like, why is everyone staring at me? When I realized that as I'm doing it, I have Mariah Carey's Christmas record blaring from the car. So I was like, yeah, I've become that. Look, this is what I always remind people. What do you do at halftime of a game? You have some drinks, you eat some food, and you hang out with your friends and your family. That's what you do at halftime of the game, which is exactly what you do on Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving is meant to be the halftime of the Christmas season.
Now, my big question after watching last night and seeing the Christmas suit is, number one, do you have more than one?
Yeah. I mean, I think I got 3 different Christmas suits, a couple of onesies. I mean, I probably 20 different Christmas sweaters. I could wear something Christmas every day in December.
And my second question is, when did you start, like, wearing these things, like, on the regular? Like, was this something like your whole life? Did you hit, like, 25 and be like, I love Christmas? Like, is there, like, a little history behind this?
No, I think that there was a moment for me when I was touring in music where I'll never forget with the band Perry at the time. And Kimberly Perry, the lead singer, came in and said, we want to do band intros. And so we want to do something where everybody can come out and sort of have their big moment in the show. And most bands, when they do that, they do that like, I'm going to take my rock stance, I'm going to look like a god and make me and that's just not a personality. It never has been. So in that moment, she was like, what do you want to do for your intro? And I was like, I want to dance. And she's like, you can't dance. I said, exactly. And that's why I want to do it. And my wife, who was a singer and dancer for years and a choreographer, she was like, I could teach you some things. I'm like, no, I want to look like an idiot on stage. And so for me, whenever that moment happened, when I realized, like, I just don't care what people think, that was the light went off moment for me. So it was probably in my late 30s, and I would go out there, like, one night, never done the Worm before, had 20,000 people out in the stands. I handed somebody the fiddle, and I was like, you hold this, I'm going to try and do the Worm. It did not go well, and I don't care. Like, so that's when all the Christmas stuff started to really come into my wardrobe. At that moment that I finally realized that people are going to make fun of you no matter what. College football fans are going to hate your takes no matter what. So I might as well look Christmassy in the process.
He's Jason Fitz, co-host of Spain and Fitz tonight, 7 to 9 on 97.3 ESPN. Now, speaking of college and speaking of introductions and speaking of having a moment, former Alabama-Oklahoma quarterback Jalen Hurts was named the Eagles starting quarterback this Sunday. And I feel like everybody at ESPN has a thought, has an opinion, has something to say about the Eagles quarterback situation. So, Jason, I'm just going to leave it open-ended for you. Jalen Hurts starting over Carson Wentz. Go.
Yeah, that's the reason why everybody should be fired. And, you know, this is a situation that they were put in because Howie Roseman decided to spend a second-round pick on a quarterback. So they created their own storm. Doug Peterson has not done a good enough job of making Carson Wentz comfortable this year, which is what his main responsibility is. So It's why he shouldn't be there anymore. And Carson Wentz has let this happen because he's played so poorly. The one thing that keeps Carson Wentz there is that the dead cap number, if he's not with the team next year, is $59 million. So do we really think that Carson Wentz is going to be a good soldier in the middle of his career and just decide that he's okay, not just for 1 year, but 2 years, because his dead cap money the following year is of what, $22 million? So I had our stats and info group research it, and the large dead cap number in history ever carried by one team for one player is less than would be carried by the Eagles for Carson Wentz if he's not with the team for the next 2 years, not just next year. So they're stuck with Carson Wentz because of the job this front office did in this contract. So their only solution that saved jobs was to actually save Carson Wentz the starter. They weren't able to do that, and now the Eagles are going to be hamstrung by a contract that absolutely makes it impossible for them to do anything without just gutting their entire roster for the next 2 years, and they're going to be stuck doing that with the quarterback that's now going to be a backup? Or do you think you're really going to suddenly bring Carson Wentz in, and this will be, as I've heard Max Kellerman say, a wake-up call? That's just a big load of malarkey to me, because realistically, a pro athlete doesn't need a wake-up call. They know when they're about to be benched. So this isn't going to help any of that. And when the coaching staff says we're going to go to Jalen Hurts, what they're saying is, hey, it's not our problem. It's Carson's problem. They just told the entire locker room that they believe the problem is the player, not the coach. That's why I think they'll lose the locker room. That's why the Eagles are going to lose games. And that's why Doug Peterson's not going to be the coach there next year.
That's exactly how I feel. And Doug spoke today, and he really irritated me. I want to see how you interpret this. He was talking about Jalen Hurts, and they asked, what are you going to do for the kid? He's getting thrown into the fire, essentially. He said, in order to get him some success, you got to attempt and try and establish a little bit of the run game. And then he goes on and talks about how Jason Peters and Alshon Jeffrey won't play. Two horrendous players when Carson Wentz was under center. So now it's almost as if you are supporting this kid way more than you ever supported your actual quarterback that you're tied to. So that just frustrates me to a whole nother level. And just to throw something else in there, you talked about Doug Peterson losing his job. Is he making this move because he's afraid that he will lose his job if he doesn't win, and this might give them the best chance to win?
Yeah, well, absolutely, because if he can come out and Jalen Hurts can look lights out, then he's going to turn around and say, look at what we've done. But let me ask you, right now, what fan base feels better about their team? And I know all of these teams stink, but realistically, take our knowledge that they stink aside. What fan base feels better today? The New York Giants fan base or the Philadelphia Eagles fan base? I would argue the Giants fan base feels great, because suddenly, even though the season is bad, you got a coach that seems to be turning around the culture, and you've done everything you've done without Saquon. And now you've even won without Daniel Jones. They're going out and they're playing in a way that's easy to root for. In fact, I'd even argue, as strange as this sounds, the Washington football team fans are looking around saying, wait, yeah, we don't have the right quarterback in the room, but look at how this defense is playing. Look at how competitive we still are. We're making the most of what we have. Does anybody say that about the Eagles right now? If it's a problem with the ingredients in the cupboard, then the GM's got to go. If it's not a problem with the ingredients in the cupboard, then the coach has got to go. But what if it's both? What if the ingredients aren't good enough and the coaching is not good enough? And now you've ruined an opportunity with the quarterback that we've seen play really well. That's the easiest way to summarize. I'm not saying none of this falls on Carson Wentz. Absolutely. He takes a lot of the blame. But frankly, the organization put themselves in this situation with the contract that they signed. Somebody's got to pay the price for that. So Doug Peterson can throw all the Hail Marys he wants to keep his job, but they're in this situation because everybody in the organization blew it.
Jason, we've also talked about the fact with Wentz, because you mentioned the fact about, is it the GM, is it the coach, is it both? And you also mentioned, listen, Wentz is not without blame. And one of my big problems with Wentz is it feels like he himself is not taking ownership of this. There's so many times he says, I got to be better. Well, that's the cutout cliff notes. Anybody could say that. At some point, Wentz has to get up and say to somebody, it might not be you or me in the media, but somebody on his team, and be like, I got to stop staring down receivers. I got to stop holding on to the ball. I got to stop killing every play that's sent into me and changing the line of scrimmage. At some point, I got to actually show you the football intelligence that everybody told us about for 2016 and 2017.
Yeah, you're so right about that. And I'll make an oversimplified analogy. And before anybody blows me up on Twitter, I understand there's a difference between rec league games and pro athletes. I understand that. But there's still a human nature. And if you're playing a rec league basketball game with somebody and every time he touches the ball, He turns it over and takes a bad shot. And then afterwards, as he's running back, he says, my bad, guys, my bad, my bad. How many times can he say that before you just stop feeding him the ball because you don't want to hear it? And there is a real element of that. Like Carson Wentz can come out all day and say, I got to be better. Realistically, until his play is better, it doesn't matter. And his confidence is shaken. The question is, what do you do to get that back? I mean, because that's the hardest part. I know I've said to you guys before, but to me, Carson Wentz all year has looked like a jump shooter and has lost his shot. And in that situation, you all know it as much as you cover the NBA. In that situation, 101, what's a coach do? He finds the shot that's the most comfortable in rhythm for that shooter, and you let him shoot his way out of that group. That hasn't happened. Doug Peterson, I don't think, has called the plays that have made him comfortable. Orlovsky had a great breakdown a couple of weeks ago about the plays that were working for Carson Wentz and questioning why they're only being called a few times a game. It's a fair question. Like, even if he's uncomfortable doing one thing, do that one thing until his mojo changes around. But then the other side of it is Carson's got to go out and actually he can say my bad all day long. It just no longer carries any weight because he makes the same mistakes week in and week out. The toughest part, though, and you guys know my Raiders fandom, the toughest part about it is when you've seen a quarterback play incredibly well. I saw Derek Carr have an MVP caliber season in 2016. Part of the reason that I believed in Derek Carr when nobody else has over the last several years is when you've seen a quarterback do that, you know they can do that. The hardest part about this is we have seen Carson Wentz play at an incredibly high level. So you know at some point he can do that. It's up to the Eagles to figure out, since they're stuck financially, it's up to them to figure out who can come in and find the mojo again with Carson Wentz and get him to not just say my bad, but also actually fix these things.
At the time of the draft, in the back of my head, I always thought that this was their long-term plan, to get Jalen Hurts to be the starting quarterback. Now, Howie Roseman, there's a lot of videos of what happened at the time of the draft and videos of him speaking, and he said, we've missed on Russell Wilson in the past. We don't want to do that again. So who drafts Russell Wilson, if that's what you think this can be, for your bench? So I'm almost convinced now that their idea and their mold the whole time was to somehow get Jalen Hurts in as the starting quarterback. Because if you're going to mention Russell Wilson and not wanting to miss out on that opportunity, you don't just have that sitting on your bench.
Yeah, well, it's a wasted draft pick at that point. Like, who uses a second-round pick on a quarterback that they don't intend to start? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. And for anyone that says it was for a Taysom Hill sort of opportunity, I mean, you look at the limited number of snaps, but even then, Taysom Hill, the long-term plan for the Saints was to turn him into a starter. That's been part of something they've been trying to do. So if you're looking for the next Taysom Hill, yeah. I mean, the same person that authorized that draft pick is the same person that authorized a massive contract to Carson Wentz. That's why it just doesn't make any sense. You can't build a football franchise, a successful franchise, without absolute commitment to a direction. And the one thing you can't do is just throw spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. And that's what it feels like they were doing in this instance, was just kind of saying, well, he's a great player and we need him, so let's just go get him. Also, I mean, because of my work in college football, I've covered a lot of Jalen Hurts. I believe that Jalen Hurts has a lot of great qualities, but I think it was Ian Fitzsimmons that smartly pointed out Jalen Hurts is also somebody that's had tremendous accuracy issues until he was put under the right coaching. He's had issues to get into the right read at different times. These are all things that are going to have to be fixed. So are we now going to buy the Doug Peterson that broke Carson Wentz is the right guy to fix everything that could be wrong with Jalen Hurts? I just, none of it makes sense. And that's why it feels like we're looking at a jigsaw puzzle and the Eagles are just cramming pieces in without any realization of how one piece leads to the next.
He's Jason Fitz, co-host of Spain and Fitz 7 to 9 tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Jason, one more real quick before we let you go. I want to know from you, because you are around a lot of smart people up there at ESPN, and we've heard for years about how great Carson Wentz can be. We've heard about how great Jalen Hurts can be. And now that Hurts is starting over Wentz, I want to know your perspective on this. Who do you think has the potential for the better career right now moving forward, Hurts or Wentz?
Wentz, without question. And look, I'm Mike Golick Jr. always makes fun of me for it. I'm a little bit risk averse when it comes to quarterbacks. And I think that comes from years of watching the Jamarcus Russells of the world, the Todd Marinoviches of the world that I grew up watching. And Philly knows this. Like, you've had your fair share of as a team of quarterbacks that were difficult to watch play week in and week out, right? Like, so you go through the regrettable years and it makes you a little bit risk averse. So I believe in proof of concept. Right now, there is legitimately zero proof of concept that Jalen Hurts can be anything better than what Carson Wentz has been. And realistically, if anybody thought Jalen Hurts was going to be the next, let's just say, Deshaun Watson, he never would have made it to the second round. If the Eagles thought he was going to be the next Russell Wilson, he would have been picked at the top of the first round, right? Everybody has to admit that when a quarterback falls to the second round, that means that there are fatal flaws in their game that make it a roll of the dice. We cannot acknowledge that roll of the dice in April and then forget it in November just because it's a little more convenient. Like, he didn't get an offseason. He didn't get a preseason. He hasn't gotten a lot of snaps. You want to say that everything that could ever be wrong with a quarterback was fixed in that amount of time for a second round quarterback? I don't buy it. So we've seen greatness from Carson Wentz. I believe that once you've seen it, you can see it again. We've seen nothing from Jalen Hurts. So I think it's presumptuous at best to presume that Jalen Hurts right now can come in and outperform somebody that got paid at some point because he's a very good quarterback.
Jason Fitz joins us every single Wednesday here at 3 o'clock on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. As all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Jason, always appreciate time. We'll be listening to you and Sarah tonight.
You guys have a great week. Thank you so much.